Hello everyone. We are just going to wait one more minute to begin, but if you're here, feel free to type something in the chat box. And if you have any questions for the end of my mini class today, then that's where you can type them as well as in the chat box. And they don't have to be related to what I'm talking about today. They can just be questions about like anything about sexuality or emotional empowerment or like anything. Maybe not politics, but basically anything. Yeah. Okay, 9 o'clock. So, welcome to Tea with Phoebe D. Hey, Lacey. How are you? Thanks for joining me. So, in case you don't know me, I'm a women's sexual and emotional empowerment coach. And by empowerment, I just mean being aware of your own power to create your life. And I basically teach women tools to help themselves free themselves from shame, guilt, fear, conditioning, and fall madly in love with themselves and their sexuality. Today, I'm going to be talking about what if you were in charge of your sexual fulfillment instead of your partner, for example. And to be honest, when I was thinking about doing this talk today, I really don't feel super qualified to talk about this for a few different reasons. One is that like every relationship is so different and different things work for different people. Hey, Lucy. And also this is something that I'm still working with a lot and working through and trying to find my way through it. But it definitely has created a lot of fulfillment and a lot of empowerment in my life. And so I really did want to share it and to share this concept with people. So I think when we enter into a marriage or a monogamous relationship, we come with the expectation that our partner is going to fulfill our sexual needs. So people think, oh, one of the best things about getting married is you get to have sex whenever you want. And that's just not true for the most part, I guess, unless you decide that ahead of time, and that is, you both decide that, in this marriage, we'll just have sex whenever the other person wants to have sex, like whether we feel like it or not. And that's a valid choice to make. So I'm not saying that that what I'm talking about today is the only right way to do a relationship, because I don't think there is one right way to do a relationship. But I feel like we often come into a marriage with that kind of expectation, but it's an unspoken expectation and an untalked about expectation. You should have sex with me. You should have sex with me more. You should not want to have sex with me as much as you do. And you should fulfill my sexual needs. And that puts our sexual fulfillment out of our control into the hands of our partner. And so it leaves a lot of room for misunderstanding, hurt, resentment, and dissatisfaction on one partner's part or the other, or most likely both. So, and decided my sexual fulfillment is my responsibility. And like how does that feel to you? When I first started thinking about it, it seemed really empowering, but also really daunting. Like I didn't know what to do about it or how to do that. And I don't even know like how I learned about this or how I thought about it, but I think it was just realizing, maybe partly being with my husband, because he really takes charge of his own sexual fulfillment. And so I never felt pressure to have sex with him, ever. Like, a yes or a no was equally as acceptable to him. If I said, if you said, hey, do you want to have sex? And I said yes, it would be like, great. And if I said no, it would be, okay. Like, no big deal. There was no guilt. There was no pressure. There was no, you are obligated to fulfill my needs. Why aren't you having sex with me right now? It was just like, okay, I'll go masturbate. I'll go self-pleasure. I'll go do my thing. Or, okay, I just won't. I'll just go do something else and be happy. And yeah, it makes you feel really vulnerable. I get that. I totally do. There's also like a part of us well, there's a part of me that likes putting that on someone else. That, that like just, I don't want to take responsibility for my own sexual fulfillment, actually, in a way. And this is what it looks like to me to take responsibility for my own sexual fulfillment. It means having a pleasure practice, a self-pleasure or a masturbation practice or time. It means prioritizing my own pleasure in my life. And it means learning how to be so knowledgeable about my body and what I want that I can give myself really satisfying pleasure, where I love to give myself pleasure. And I'm like, woo, I get to masturbate. This is great. And that way, if my husband doesn't want to have sex with me because of, the 30,000 reasons why we might not want to have sex with somebody at that moment, I can self-pleasure and enjoy it and be happy about it. And I've noticed if I have a self-pleasure practice, regardless of whether we're having sex, 50 times a day or no, okay, we've never had sex 50 times a day, but like, regardless of having sex with him or not, I still self-pleasure. And so it's kind of like I keep my pleasure bucket full, or full enough that I feel happy and fulfilled. And then whenever we have sex, or if I have sex with someone else, ever, it's like a bonus. It's like it overflows my pleasure bucket. And so regardless of whether he says yes or no, I'm okay. Like, I don't need that to feel pleasure. I don't need it to fulfill my pleasure bucket, if that makes sense. We've heard a lot about like a love bucket, like filling up your own so you feel loved, but what if it's the same for pleasure? And like I said, I'm still working on this one a lot. Actually, I definitely notice every so often I start feeling resentful if he like masturbates. And whenever I start feeling resentful, it's a totally good sign to me that I'm not masturbating enough, or I'm not self-pleasuring enough myself. And because when I do, like, I'm not coming to sex with a need, I'm coming to sex with a want or a desire. And that's also like way more sexy. Way the fuck more sexy than coming with like, I need you to fulfill me. I need you to like make me feel good, because I can't make myself feel that way. Like, I don't really think that probably turns anybody on. Maybe if that's your kink, I guess. But that's few and far between. And so it's so much sexier to be like, I have like all this pleasure in my body, and I, could have pleasure with myself, but I really want to have sex with you. But if not, that's cool, right? Yeah, it's just way more free and way more sexy for both, for like everybody involved. And then we come to the whole concept of prioritizing your own self-pleasure, which has definitely been really tricky for me because just because of my conditioning and upbringing, but I think even without that, our society in general doesn't teach like prioritizing women's pleasure or prioritizing your own pleasure. Masturbation can sometimes be a source of shame instead of a source of power and celebration. And sometimes we think, well, I have better things to do. Like, I don't have time to like sit around and masturbate or to like, try to discover my body or explore my body. Like, who's got time for that? I don't know if you're anything like me, but that's kind of something that I still struggle with. And I'm figuring it out. I'm prioritizing it more. But yeah, it's a process for sure. There's a lot of layers to it, I'm finding. But yeah, our relationship just it feels so much freer and more joyful and more exciting to have sex when we both self-pleasure regularly. And I think something that really helped us both with this, well, me especially, my husband's never really had much an issue with it, but is when we had our son. Because, man, like, with a new baby, you have no energy and you often don't feel sexy and you're trying to figure out, like, how to be sexual while, you have all this, like, new responsibility and you're in parental roles, which can affect the way you see yourself, the way you see each other. There's, like, so much stuff that goes along with having a new baby. And really, like, sleep deprivation is one of the biggest ones, and just so much energy output that you often don't have the time or the energy for sex very often. And so him and I really started to consciously support each other in self-pleasure time. And so one of us would take our son and let the other one masturbate and vice versa. And we supported each other's sexual fulfillment that way and kind of fulfilled each other's sexual needs by giving them the time and space to fulfill themselves sexually. And so that was something that really created a shift in our relationship that way. And also a lot of people, I think, have issues or vulnerability around their partner masturbating, and that's very real. I just realized it is 9:13, so if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box, and it can be about anything. It doesn't have to be about this topic today. It can be like about anything sexual or emotional. Yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there. But I definitely had issues with my husband masturbating when we first got into our relationship because I just felt really jealous. I felt like I wasn't enough. It can bring up so much stuff. And if that's the case, I would really encourage you to explore that some more and figure out why is that? What are the beliefs behind it? Where does it come from? And it took me a while to work through that so that I didn't feel jealous anymore. And like I said before, I still do sometimes if I'm not prioritizing my own pleasure. And I think with him, when we started our relationship, that's totally what it was. Is I was jealous of him because I wasn't prioritizing my pleasure. It's so funny how that can happen. Yeah. So that's like a really real thing, and I want to validate that. A lot of people struggle with their partner self-pleasuring. And so, yeah, it would be good to ask, if that's the case, it's good to ask yourself questions like, how do I feel about prioritizing my self-pleasure? And what do I think are the responsibilities in a marriage? And, um, how would I feel if I felt filled up with pleasure? Would I still feel jealous? Maybe we need to talk about what that masturbation looks like and how it feels and why they do it. And this might be really, I don't know if I should say this. It might be really controversial. But I was, in my belief system, I guess, I believe that, like, if my husband wants to have sex with me, but I don't want to have sex with him for whatever reason, but I don't want him to masturbate either, I'm putting my own comfort or my, like, I'm not allowing for his sexual fulfillment in his life. And I was never really okay with that. But other people might see that really differently. So I'm not saying that that would be true for everybody and that that's how they see it, because I know that's not how a lot of couples see it. They really feel like that's cheating, or they feel like, they just feel like they're not okay with that. I think, honestly, I think a lot of these kind of subjects and parts of marriage or being in a monogamous relationship, I think people don't talk about them before they get married, and they don't talk about them after they're married because it's too uncomfortable. And not talking about it never solves it. And so I just always want to encourage lots of communication within yourself, to yourself, and with your partner. And then also there's like the option of not being monogamous. So if one person like wants to have a lot of different sex or kinds of sex, then maybe there's the option of, that partner or both partners, entering into polyamory, or opening up your marriage in different ways. Like, there's so many different ways to do that, in ways that can make everybody excited and comfortable. And like, that's a totally legit option as well. And it can be a really empowering and amazing thing if you both want that and you're both on board. Hey, Roxy. Good to see you. So, yeah. That's kind of all I have to say on that subject. And so I think I'll end with like I've been developing like 3 main questions towards empowerment, and this really helped me when I applied it to my sexual life and my sexual fulfillment in or out of a marriage. So the first question is, what do I want? A lot of us get so focused on what we don't want and what we don't have that we don't think about, what would I rather have here? What do I really want? Do I want sex twice a week, 5 times a week, 20 times a week? What do I want that sex to look like? Ideally, in a perfect world. And how do I think that would make me feel? What would that do for me? And then the second question is, what are my choices? What resources do I have? A lot of times We get so focused on our problem that we don't realize that that it's just a question with an answer. So, some options could be, well, I could talk to my husband and tell him, or my wife, and tell her exactly what it is that I want in our sex life. I could say, hey, I want, you to initiate sex this many times, or I want to plan sex this many times a week, or whatever. Um, just communication is a really great resource, or maybe we could open up our marriage. Maybe I could prioritize and plan into my schedule, self pleasure twice a week and see what happens. All these kind of creative solutions that we have available to us that we just don't think about when we are thinking about it as a problem. And then the third question is, how would that make me feel, and can I give that to myself? So my big thing, one of the biggest things that I've healed to date, is that my big thing is I wanted to feel desired. And a lot of my choices were driven by wanting to feel desired. And when I felt resentful, it was because I didn't feel desired. And it was like this constant battle to feel desired, desired, desired. And it took me a while of taking this course and doing practices, self-pleasure practices, before I could see myself as desirable and feel myself as desirable and be in touch with my own desire. And then that all relaxed. And I don't need my husband to make me feel desired anymore, because I know I'm desirable in and of myself. And that really changed our sex life, actually, because he didn't feel this, he always felt like there was this like big pressure that he could never like quite perform well enough, because nobody can make us feel something that we're determined not to feel because of a wound, right? If we feel unlovable, it doesn't matter how many people love us or how much they love us, we're never going to feel loved until we heal that wound within ourselves. Yeah, and so, if you think about what, like, this sex life that I want, or if my husband or my wife does this, how do you think that's going to make you feel? What need do you feel like that's going to satisfy? And is there a way that you can give that to yourself? Is there a way that you can find that within yourself without needing someone else to give it to you? So those 3 questions can be applied to anything, any part of your life. So yeah, that's my talk for tonight. I love you guys. I hope you have a good night. I hope this was interesting and informative and not too crazy for you. And I will talk to you next week. Let me just check. Next week, I'm talking about 4 steps to knowing that you're enough. So I look forward to seeing you there, and good night.